My goodness, has it been a long time since I uploaded a YouTube video. And I'm really grateful for that because I think it really taught me a lot about who I want to be, and I've had a lot of reflective time, and I know now how I want to use social media, which is probably why you've seen a little bit more of me on Instagram, which is definitely the platform that I prefer the most. But I do believe that YouTube is also a great place to share more about myself, so I can be of help or of value or give more kind of long form advice whenever I have those moments where I want to be a little bit more elaborative, and that is what this video is for. I want to share my experience, my story with the Palisades Fire and how that's affected me and how I've grown from it, kind of just where I am right now, in hopes that it helps any of you guys going through either a similar experience or maybe something else in life that is, you know, rocking your world right now and you need help transitioning and need help to heal from a heartbreak or something or other. So I hope that this video is helpful, and I just kind of want to get right on into it. It's pretty ironic because the weeks leading up to the Palisades Fire, I was just so grateful, and I just had this inkling of wanting to share a little bit more, or not even share, but record and have all of these memories just so that I could just have in life. I don't know what came over me, but I started picking up my vlog camera. I started just filming little bits and clips, and I basically kind of had a little B-roll of like what my life was like prior to everything happening. So I'm gonna play that for you now, just so you guys can just have a little bit of a taste of what life consisted of for me. Palisades is such a special place in my heart and my soul, and I know it was for so many others, and it's so heartbreaking to think that it's gone. And it's really hard for me to still wrap my head around it, still to this day, that it's fully not even there anymore. I moved to LA when I was 15 years old with my family. We relocated from Ohio and we moved to the Palisades. That was where I went to high school. That was where I lived when I went to college. I just loved it, and I felt very integrated there. It's really funny because I spent probably about the same amount of time, almost just shy of a couple years, in LA as I have when I was younger living in Ohio. I've lived there for now like 13 years, almost 13 years, versus Ohio 15 years. So I clearly have been there for almost half of my life. I really consider the Palisades more of my home than I do Ohio. I don't really consider that my hometown. I consider LA and Palisades my hometown just because I really grew into myself there. In LA is where I actually became an adult. Everything about who I am, I feel like, was really formed in those years, and I am so blessed to have been there. We moved out of, I would say, my childhood home in 2021, and I did vlog that, so it is up on my channel. And I shared how I moved into an apartment, and then I lived in that apartment for a couple of years, and I would always keep finding myself going back to the Palisades. I just loved it there. I would go there for my walks. I still had all my doctors there. I had my dry cleaners, my nails, my car wash, like everything there. I still had friends and family there. I still just would go back all the time. So I ended up moving back there again in 2023, and that's when I've lived there from there until January. And it was the best experience ever because before I lived up in the Highland, but this time around when I moved back to the Palisades, Palisades, I lived in the Village. And that is kind of the center, the heart of the Palisades, where all the shops are, where the restaurants are. It was definitely more of a different experience because this time I could just like leave my apartment and go walk to the Bluffs or go walk to anywhere, at the grocery store. I would walk to restaurants, I would walk to meet up with friends, to dinner, and just be in my neighborhood. I would go to Erewhon all the time. It was definitely different because before I would always have to drive down from the Highlands into the Village, and this time I was really just in the heart of it. I would go to my Pilates in the morning, and I just enjoyed every single bit of it. And I remember praying even the day of the fires, like being so grateful for my life, and I was just thanking God for everything. Like, I loved my life so much. I loved my home. I loved my apartment. I really put so much love into that place because prior to my other apartment, I really didn't like put too much effort into decorating because I always looked at it as a temporary place. And you know, it was my own place. It wasn't just like my family's home. It was my little place that I created with my boyfriend, and we just really enjoyed our life there. And then come January 7th, when we just were going about our normal days, I was at the office and I just had happened to look out the window and I saw this little bit of smoke, and I was like, what is that? I immediately started researching in my phone, fire LA, fire Brentwood, fire Palisades, because I was just like, where is it? Because the way it looked over the mountain ridge, I just couldn't figure out exactly where the fire was, and there was nothing had been reported. And then I immediately texted my friends. I said, hey, do you guys know about this fire? I can see it from my office. And then my friend was like, it's in our neighborhood, like it's up like the top of the Highlands, da-da-da. And that is when it started getting reported. You know, things kind of started to escalate, and I was sitting there. I personally experienced so many different fires in the Palisades and while I was living in the Highlands. That's kind of more a mountainous area, and that's kind of where things do happen to catch on fire if that does happen. So I kind of knew the protocol of like, this is what you need to pack and this is what needs to be done. And I just knew that not something to get crazy worried about, but just to be prepared. And that was just kind of what I was helping my friend doing, because she was like, okay, I don't know what to pack. And I was telling her and helping her with that. And then for me, I didn't even think that there's never been an incident where it comes to the Village. So I wasn't even thinking I needed to go home and pack or anything like that. But then as I was sitting there and I was working, I kept seeing it get bigger in a very short period of time. I think within 30 minutes it had grown substantially, and I started seeing flames pop from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain, and I was like, this is getting kind of serious. And then I immediately left and I went back home to start packing. And it was when I was starting to pack, we got a knock on our door to evacuate, and that our whole building was evacuating. And I was concerned, but I was kind of just like, well, I mean, it's never gonna come over here. We're probably just gonna, there's just gonna be loads of smoke. We need to just go stay with my parents for a few days and then we'll be back. So when I was packing, from the time that I got the knock on the door, I really had only 10 minutes to pack. So I just kind of threw some things in. I grabbed, you know, my passport. I really only packed for a couple of days. I did not bring like any clothes. I brought like a couple of pairs of jeans and like a couple of shirts. I brought like tennis shoes and my white sneakers, and that's about it. I didn't pack any of my shoes. I didn't pack any of my purses. I just didn't think that it would be anything. And so I left, and then James ended up leaving at the same time as me, but for some reason he wasn't able to get out of the Palisades because it was so packed. For some reason I was able to get out, and it took me about an hour to get back to my office because I couldn't even make it to my parents' house. That would have been another 2 hours. And so I thought, you know, I'd just go back to the office, wait it out until traffic dies down, and then go there. But he wasn't able to get out, so he ended up going back to our place and just kind of sat there and waited until the roads cleared up a bit. And it was at that moment that I realized that was actually really good that he went back, because I totally forgot to do one of the most important things that I told my friend to do, which is to go around the house and literally video every single thing, every room, everything, so you know exactly what is there. And it was in that video that he sent me that I realized I left, you know, my purses. I didn't pack a couple of things, so I just had him quickly pack like a couple more things, literally just 4 bags that I really loved. And then he ended up leaving, and that was that. And by the time James was leaving, he was sending me pictures and videos that the flames were definitely coming really like a lot closer, and that was definitely very concerning. But still, I was kind of like, you know, they're gonna put it out, like it's fine, like we're just gonna, it's serious, but it's gonna be okay. But then that's kind of, as soon as you think that, which not normally when I think positively that these things kind of happen, but as soon as he left, that's kind of when everything started going down, and I started getting text messages and seeing the news, and was getting a lot worse. By the time I was leaving the office and I was going back to my parents' house, I got a text from our neighbor. I evacuated quite later than everybody else, and and they sent a picture of across the street, which was the high school, and the high school was on fire. And that's when I really was like, wow, this is real. And I started breaking down and I cried and I called my dad and I was freaking out and I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. Like, what's gonna happen? I don't know what's gonna happen, but this is a big issue. Everybody was just watching the news, just trying to figure out what was happening. I got to my parents' house. Obviously, I had been crying in the car, and I got home. I immediately put on the news and I was just watching vigilantly to see what was going on. And it was, you know, the whole night, that's all I did. I just sat there in front of the TV watching what was going on. I wanted to see, I wanted to know. And then it just started getting worse, and I noticed that the fire was coming up and burning the houses on the street that I was living on. And that was really heartbreaking to see, you know, the people's homes. Like, it was just, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe that it got to the village and it had gotten that bad. And then that's when they said they ran out of water. And that was really heartbreaking, just to see that it's burning and they can't do anything about it. That was really, I don't even have words to describe how difficult that was. And then, you know, try to go to sleep and couldn't sleep at all, of course. Constantly waking up, checking my phone, trying to figure out what's happening. Everybody in my building was texting each other, trying to see if anybody knew anything, if everybody was all right and all that stuff. So like, I was constantly just like waking up in the middle of the night, checking my phone, checking the news to see if I see anything new or different. And it was just kind of the same things until about 6 in the morning. I woke up and I was like, I can't sleep anymore. I just have to see what's going on. And that's kind of when I saw everything, kind of like the aftermath, the library being burned, you know, the Corpus Christi, a lot of the Huntington where I go to walk and where my favorite houses are to go see every single day. And then I saw the Starbucks and all the things that are in the town that are fully gone. And yeah, I mean, I broke down again and I was just devastated. Honestly, I was at a loss of words. I couldn't believe this was happening. I couldn't believe it was real. And I just was getting text messages, trying to hear from people. And I, you know, was hearing from friends that lost their homes, and it was heartbreaking. I mean, I keep saying the word heartbreaking, devastating, at a loss of words, but truly, I don't know how else you describe an experience like this. And to know that every single person that you know lost their homes is just, that's what I think what made it really sad for me, is that like, for me, I didn't care about my home. For me, it was my apartment, and I'm very grateful to have an apartment, but like, these are people's homes that they've had for 20 to 30 years. Childhood stuff, grandparent stuff, letters. You lose things that are irreplaceable. And not only that, the things that make a home. And it's not just about like, oh, it's a house. No, this is someone's literal home that they've been living in or passing down for generations, or these are places that it's gonna be very tough to rebuild. And I know that's a sentiment that everybody's like, we're gonna rebuild, and yes, we will, but we also, just the way that the Palisades was, as we knew it, that's gone. And that's just kind of the hard thing to wrap your head around, is like that charm. Some of those houses and buildings and people have been there for so many years, and some people aren't able to go back because, you know, maybe they won't be able to afford it, or they didn't have insurance, or for a lot of different reasons. And that's just, I think, knowing that everything, that's the end, like it was an abrupt end, it was really hard to move forward and like really, in those moments, really just kind of wrap your head around. And at this point, I still didn't know what was going on with my apartment. I didn't find out until like the next day, 2 days after everything kind of went down, that it was still standing. But obviously we didn't know the extent. We didn't know if the building had been burned anywhere. We didn't know anything about how the contents were, like all the smoke and all that stuff. So it was just kind of a waiting period for a couple of weeks until we could go back in. I don't even think I went back in for 3 weeks until I was able to even see what was going on. And obviously that was devastating to relive it and see it all again and see what was left. And that was heartbreaking to see that everything just was fully leveled. It was like a war zone. It was just like, I couldn't believe this is real life. I still can't believe it's real life. I keep remembering the Palisades as it was, my life as it was. It's still hard sometimes to think that if I go back to LA, like, it's not there. That's what was hard about being there, and ultimately what made me want to move outside of California, is because being there was almost too hard to be in the place. I know that the place that I love the most is gone. It's always when the most devastating things happen that you also see at the same time how much beauty isn't in that. And I mean that in such a, I'll explain, but basically it's just in such time of destruction, I feel like you feel God the most, and I feel like you experience so much love and so much support. And I've never experienced so much love and support in that time. And the way the community just came together, and the way that people were reaching out to each other and checking in and doing whatever they could, even if people who lost absolutely everything, those people were still trying to give to other people who lost everything. Like, it was just so beautiful to see the way that everybody kind of came out and poured so much love. And LA as a city really was pouring in and giving so much love during this time. And so even though something so devastating happened, it was also beautiful to witness something like that and to see how God moves through people, and to see how in moments where you lose so much, you actually end up still having a lot, and really recognizing how much abundance you have puts into perspective like what is actually important, which the people that you have in your life and the experiences and memories. And even though everything happened the way it was, I still don't regret anything about living there. I still don't have any, like, if anything, it makes me more grateful for all the moments that I had there, even if it came to such an abrupt end. And for me, I think it's been also really hard because it's hard to like say it in this way, but I feel very lucky and fortunate for the fact that like my place in particular didn't burn. It's always that weird sense of like, because my place didn't, it makes me feel even worse, because I feel like even worse for the people who lost everything. It just kind of makes you feel guilty, undeserving, and it's a weird thing. You still lost your home in a way that you can't go back. That chapter's done. So you do lose your home in a way, but it's nowhere near the way that other people have. So it's like that weird feeling of like, how do you navigate all of these complex emotions? You almost have like a survivor's guilt in a way, like you shouldn't be feeling the way that you're feeling, but because others have it so much worse. But then you're trying to navigate, no, like you still did lose something, and therefore it's okay to like move through those emotions because it's very real. So it was just kind of a weird juxtaposition of just emotions and like trying to be able to navigate that. And like I said, it was less about me losing my home in particular, but more my sadness was about the community as a whole and more about the Palisades as a whole. That's what I consider my home more than like my actual dwelling. Anyways, fast forward, it definitely took some time to be the place that I am now. I mean, now it's been 3 months, almost exactly 3 months since everything's gone down, and I feel like I've learned a tremendous amount, and that's what I really wanted to come here and share. Obviously that was my story, but what I really want to share is the fact about how I've healed and how I've moved forward, because I think that that is what I wish I knew when I went through other hardships. For instance, when I lost my mom and when I had other hardships as a child, I wish I knew all of this information. So that's why I wanted to be here and share the things that I've learned this time around. And that is the number one thing, is to feel and to allow yourself to go through and feel your emotions. And that's where I was getting at with like having guilt or feeling like I should be feeling this or I should not be feeling that. And you cannot judge yourself for how you feel. You have to allow yourself to feel the way you feel. That way you can move forward, because the worst thing that you can do is to take a moment like this where you feel sadness or anxiety or you feel anger or any of those emotions and shove it down. That is going to absolutely ruin you in the future. And I'm saying this because that happened to me when I lost my mom. I became extremely positive, which in one way you would think that's great, but it was to the point that I didn't process any negative emotions at all for probably about 10 years. And it was 10 years later that I felt all of those negative emotions all at once, and that was not good for myself, because I was like, why am I so sad for no reason? And it was because I realized that it came up. Everything that I had felt when I was younger finally came up to the surface, and I had to deal with it. So at one point or the other, you're going to have to deal with these emotions, so it's better to deal with them right now when you're going through it, rather than stuff them down and save them for a later date. One of the best ways I like to feel is by giving myself quiet time and quiet space, sitting in silence, and journaling. Journaling truly throughout this time has saved me. It's helped my mental health so much. I made it a thing where after everything happened, I just kind of wrote everything. I wrote down my story. I wrote down how I was feeling. Every single day I would just journal about how I'm feeling. And I was really just moving through the emotions. I wrote so many entries about being sad and anxious or it coming up. I always found that every single week on that date, on Tuesday when that went down, I would get really anxious. I'm like, why am I so anxious? Why am I feeling this way? And I realized, oh, it's because this many weeks ago I went through a very traumatic experience, and your body keeps score. Your body remembers trauma sometimes more than you do, and you have to acknowledge that sometimes it's okay to feel those feelings. That's why I like to sit down and journal and do all of those things, because when I do that, it allows me to release the emotions that I'm feeling, and then I'm able to move forward. A lot of times we just need validation, and instead of searching for that validation elsewhere, because sometimes you may not get it, not everybody is going to be able to validate your emotions the way that you need them to, and therefore you need to be able to do that for yourself. And that's why journaling and spending time with yourself and kind of asking yourself how you feel and allowing yourself to feel is the best way to self-validate and manage your own emotions. And then when you have anger and sadness and all of that, instead of it coming out in reactive ways when you are, you know, talking to someone and whatever, you get in a disagreement. Sometimes that happens if you stuff it down and don't deal with it. You might be in a normal situation and all of a sudden you overreact, or you have an episode honestly over nothing, but it's really because deep down you're feeling a different way about something and you haven't dealt with that. That's why I think it's so important to have that moment and to allow yourself to do what you need to do. Some of the ways that I like to sit with myself is I will literally go and sit into a room, quiet room, and I either will play meditation music or I'll just sit in silence and I will just close my eyes and I'll do 8 count breaths. I'll breathe in for 8, breathe out for 8. And I'll do that maybe about 10 times. And then I will literally just sit with myself and ask myself, how do I feel? And I ask myself, why do I feel that way? What's the root of this? Where is this coming from? And then you just continue to ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? You continue to tell yourself affirmations. So for instance, I'll tell myself, I am safe. I'm gonna be okay. I will get through this. You know, those kind of things that are just, like I said, validating yourself. Those are ways that you do validate yourself, is by telling yourself you're gonna be okay. You can even give yourself a little hug and just breathe and sit there and move through it. That's what I mean when I'm saying to move through your feelings and manage your own emotions. The other thing that I think is really important to healing is to have some kind of routine, because when you're totally thrown out of your normal everyday routine, feel really unstable, you need to create this stability within yourself. And I think sometimes we look outside to our environment for stability, but our outside environment is not where stability comes from. It comes from us. It comes from how we regulate our time and how we manage basically everything in our life. And that is why I'm saying a routine, a grounding routine, thinking of the things that really ground you, and try to have a morning and night routine that do that for you. And it doesn't have to be super elaborate. You don't have to go and do like 20 million things, because right now it's just to keep things super simple. Do the things that ground you and make you feel somewhat normal, because you're not going to feel your best, but you want to feel somewhat normal. And then after a while, after you are going through those motions of having a few weeks of doing that routine, then you can start adding new things as you feel ready to do them. I think sometimes we go into these extremes where we do nothing at all and we just kind of get super set and sad, which is okay. Like I said, you're supposed to feel your feelings, but at the same time, you need to give yourself some stability. You need to give yourself something to do to help you have that, like I said, normalcy again, so you can move through it. But then you don't want to go to the other extreme where you feel like you're just continuing to run and be super busy that you don't give yourself time to feel. So you just need that like happy medium where you're able to keep things simple, do the things that are helping your physical and mental body. That's the other thing I wanted to say, is you need to take care of your physical body. It doesn't have to be working out 5 times a week, but getting some sort of movement in, getting like an easy yoga or easy Pilates or easy, just something small. You can't just, you know, always be on top of your game all the time, and this is especially the time that you may not be. So kind of moving with things slowly and then build upon that. And the last thing that's been really helpful in this healing journey is having friends and family who are really supportive. Like I said, I've never felt more love and support during this time, but especially having those friends that were literally going through the exact same thing as I was so helpful, and I was able to lean on them and vice versa. I think that that really just helped make this healing process so much better, to be able to heal alongside people. I also want you to know, especially if you're going through something that's obviously not like this and you're going through something that is a little bit more of a solitary experience, you still always have God and you still always have Him to lean on, and this is where you can really strengthen that relationship with Him. I really don't know what I would do without God. I've never felt more loved and comforted and guided and abundant during this time. And I mean abundant in terms of like, I still have my health. The fact that I would pray and ask for comfort and support and love and to feel like I had that stability, literally what all I was praying for, and then obviously for others. And the way that I watched Him move and work through just so many different ways, it was just so beautiful. And that's where it made me even more, like I said, strengthen my relationship, and I've never felt more close than during this time. And I think that this is the time, instead of like leaning away and feeling like, oh, like why did this happen? Because I think another part of it is that when you have moments like this and you don't understand why something bad has happened in your life, it could probably lead you astray, because you're like, why would God do this? Da da da, like I don't understand. And you may not understand, but he does show up in times of hurt and suffering. And I really do believe that it is in the suffering that we are changed and transformed and we grow. And this is the time where we can use this to be a better version of ourselves, and we can, you know, learn the lessons. That's always what I say in any hard time or hardship: look for the lessons, because that's all you can do. I mean, you will literally drive yourself insane thinking over and over like, why did this happen, and be upset, and you can be bitter because something, you know, bad has happened in your life. And yes, some things are so unfair and life is unfair, but you really have to look at life as this is a journey and this is just part of my story, and I'm not gonna let this take away my joy. I'm not gonna let this take away any more than it already has taken away. So therefore I'm gonna move forward, and I'm gonna try to look at the positives, and whatever my circumstances are right now, I'm gonna make the most of it. And that's how you move forward. I've never been in a place in my life where I'm more thankful. Like I said, leading up to, you know, everything that happened, I was so thankful for my life, but I'm also so thankful for my life right now. And I'm so thankful for everything that I have. And even though something like this has happened, it's hurt so much, and it's been incredibly hard to navigate. At the same time, I'm like never been more grateful with how I've navigated something like this in my life. And I've also never been more thankful for the people that I have in my life, the perspective that I have, and the way that I am wanting to live my life moving forward. Like this has taught me so much about what matters to me and what is my focus for moving forward. I really just want to continue to thank God for that. Like I said, I don't know where I'd be without his influences and his help and his love. I just want to share that you are not alone in whatever you're going through. You always have him. You always have someone in your corner. And even if it doesn't feel like it, even if things are really, really tough, things do get better in time. Even if there's no particular reason of why something's happened, you can make the reason. And the reason could be that maybe this turned you into a better human being. Maybe this has helped you be stronger. Maybe this has given you patience and wisdom. So there's always good things that can come out of bad situations. So I really hope that this has been helpful, and I just want you guys to know I'm always here for you, and I am so grateful for all the kind messages and prayers, and I will definitely try to share more of my life. I'm not committing to any specific schedule of like uploading YouTube videos. Obviously I'm here in Miami. I did not even share that part of my life update, but that will definitely come soon in another video or so. I definitely want to share more about my life here at this moment. I really am thankful that you watched this video. Have a lovely rest of your day, evening, week, or year. Okay, bye.